Commander Jake Morrison stood in the control room of the UES Defiance and stared at the screen in front of him. The message had just come through the quantum relay, and every word felt like a punch to his chest. New Haven Colony was gone. All of it. 3 million people turned to dust in less than 10 minutes. Captain Lisa Barnes walked up behind him. Her face was pale, and her hands shook as she held the data pad. She had been the one to receive the transmission first. She had been the one to watch the recordings. "Show me," Morrison said. His voice was steady, but Barnes could see the anger building in his eyes. The main screen flickered to life. The recording showed New Haven Colony, as it had been just hours ago. Green fields stretched across the valleys. Cities dotted the landscape. Children played in parks while their parents worked in the fields and factories. It was everything humanity had dreamed of when they first reached for the stars. Then the Zephyrian ships appeared. Dr. Alan Cross, the ship's expert on alien species, moved closer to watch. He had studied the Zephyrians for years. He knew their culture, their technology, their way of thinking. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw on the screen. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space above New Haven like dark clouds. Their ships were massive, each one the size of a small city. For a moment, nothing happened. The colonists below probably thought it was just another inspection. The Zephyrians often came to check on human settlements, making sure they followed all the rules. But this was different. The first beam of energy struck the northern continent. The entire landmass simply vanished, replaced by a sea of molten rock. The second beam hit the southern cities. More people died in that instant than in all of Earth's wars combined. Morrison watched his people die. He watched children running from schools that were already melting. He watched families hugging each other as the sky turned white with deadly energy. He watched everything humanity had built on New Haven turn to ash and smoke. The worst part was the broadcast that came with it. The Zephyrian commander appeared on every communication channel in the galaxy. His alien face showed no emotion as he spoke. "Let this be a lesson to all lesser species," the commander said. "You exist only because we allow it. You have territories only because we permit it. When you forget your place, this is what happens." The recording ended. The control room of the Defiance fell silent. Barnes was the first to speak. "The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Ambassador Rodriguez is there now." Morrison nodded but said nothing. He had served in the human military for 20 years. He had fought pirates and criminals across the outer systems. He had always believed that justice would win in the end. But now he stared at the empty space where New Haven used to be, and he felt something break inside him. Dr. Cross sat down heavily in his chair. "I don't understand," he said. "New Haven followed every rule. They paid all their taxes to the council. They never expanded beyond their allowed borders. They did everything right." "That's exactly why they were destroyed," Morrison said quietly. "The Zephyrians didn't attack New Haven because we broke the rules. They attacked because we were succeeding." Barnes looked confused. "What do you mean?" Morrison turned to face his crew. "Think about it. New Haven was our most successful colony. Our crops were growing better than expected. Our technology was advancing faster than the council predicted. We were proving that humans could thrive among the stars. And that scared them," Dr. Cross realized. "More than scared. It threatened everything they believe about us." Morrison walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. "For 50 years, we've been the galaxy's servants. We do the jobs no one else wants. We live on the worlds no one else claims. We smile and say thank you when they give us scraps." "But New Haven showed what we could really do," Barnes said. Morrison nodded. "And they couldn't allow that." Hours passed. The Defiance continued its patrol route while they waited for news from the Galactic Council. Morrison tried to focus on reports and duty schedules, but his mind kept returning to the images from New Haven. He thought about Maria Santos, the engineer who had sent him pictures of her new baby just last week. He thought about the school children who had written letters to the crew, thanking them for keeping the space lanes safe. All gone. Ambassador Rodriguez returned near midnight. Her face told the story before she spoke a word. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had lasted 6 hours. Representatives from dozens of species had given speeches. They had debated and argued and discussed the situation from every angle. Their final decision was a formal censure of the Zephyrian Empire. A censure, Morrison repeated. 3 million dead, and they gave them a written warning. Rodriguez nodded. The Velkari representative said the matter was regrettable but internal to Zephyrian space. The crystalline delegate claimed it was a lawful action under council regulations. Even our allies voted only for the censure. Morrison felt the last of his faith in galactic justice die. He had always believed that right would triumph over wrong. He had taught his daughter that good people working together could overcome any evil. But the galaxy had just shown him how naive he had been. "Sir," Barnes said carefully, "what are your orders?" Morrison was quiet for a long time. He thought about every human colony scattered across the galaxy. He thought about the miners on distant asteroids and the farmers on frontier worlds. He thought about the children growing up under alien rules, always knowing they were second-class citizens. In their own universe, finally, he spoke. "Send a message to every human ship, every human world, every human settlement." "What should the message say?" Barnes asked. Morrison turned back to the window. In the distance, he could see the glow of a star system where humans were probably working right now, building and growing and hoping for a better future. They deserved better than a galaxy that would watch them die and call it regrettable. "Just one word," he said. "Enough." The single word spread through human space like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every human settlement from Earth to the outer rim had received Morrison's message. The response was immediate and unanimous. On Earth, President Claire Adams called an emergency meeting in the deep bunkers beneath Geneva. The Global Defense Council had not met in full session for over a decade. Now representatives from every human world gathered around the holographic table, their faces grim in the blue light. General Kevin Price stood at the head of the table. Behind him, massive screens showed star charts that most of the council had never seen before. Red dots marked human settlements. Blue lines showed trade routes, but it was the green markers that made everyone lean forward. "These are our true assets," Price said, pointing to the green dots scattered across the galaxy. "For 50 years we've been playing the role of grateful servants, but we've also been preparing." President Adams studied the displays. "How many people know about this? Outside this room? Maybe 1,000 across all human space." Price touched a control, and the display zoomed in on a Zephyrian system. "Every trade mission we've sent out has been a scouting operation. Every human worker on alien worlds has been gathering intelligence. Every diplomatic exchange has been mapping their weaknesses." Captain Ryan Bell stepped forward. His ship, the UES Shadow, didn't appear on any official records. "We've been building a network for decades. The aliens think we're too primitive to be a threat. That blindness has been our greatest advantage." On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, engineer Maria Santos received her coded orders while standing in the orbital shipyard. Around her, dozens of alien vessels were under construction. The Velkari supervisors barely noticed the human workers who maintained their equipment and cleaned their workstations. Santos had been working here for 3 years. The Velkari thought she was just another human mechanic, grateful for steady work. They had no idea she held advanced degrees in quantum engineering and stellar mechanics. They never bothered to check human credentials. After all, what could a primitive species possibly know about real technology? She walked calmly to her tool locker and pulled out what looked like a standard repair kit. Hidden inside were devices that would have impressed even Zephyrian engineers. Santos had built them herself, using materials stolen piece by piece over months of careful planning. The first device went into the main power coupling of the nearest battleship. It would lie, dormant for weeks, looking exactly like a normal component. When activated, it would cause a cascade failure that would cripple the entire vessel. The second device was smaller, designed to corrupt the shipyard's construction databases. Soon, every ship built here would have hidden flaws in their armor, and weapons systems. The aliens would never know until it was too late. Santos wasn't alone. Across 50 star systems, humans in positions the aliens considered beneath notice began their work. Janitors installed listening devices in government buildings. Cooks poisoned food stores with substances that would cause equipment failures. Maintenance workers quietly sabotaged defensive systems. The aliens had made a critical mistake. They assumed that their advanced technology made them superior to humans. They never considered that humans might understand their technology better than they did. On Luna Base, Dr. Peter Kane walked through corridors that officially didn't exist. Project Prometheus had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for 30 years. While the galaxy saw humans struggling with outdated ships and primitive weapons, the truth was very different. Kane stopped in front of a massive vault door. Inside were weapons that would make the Zephyrian fleet look like children's toys. Humanity had taken alien technology and improved it in ways the original creators never imagined. "Are we really doing this?" asked Dr. Linda Foster, Kane's assistant. She had spent her entire career working on theoretical weapons. The idea of actually using them felt surreal. Kane nodded. New Haven changed everything. We can't hide anymore. The weapons inside the vault represented decades of human innovation. Plasma cannons that could punch through any known shield. Stealth technology that made ships completely invisible to alien sensors. And at the center of it all, the Prometheus device itself. Kane had never told anyone exactly what the device could do. The other scientists knew it was powerful, but only Kane understood its true capability. When activated, it would rewrite the basic laws of physics in a localized area. Ships would find their engines failing. Weapons would refuse to fire. Even the aliens' biological functions would be disrupted. It was a weapon that could end entire fleets without firing a shot. Back on the Defiance, Morrison watched reports flowing in from across human space. Every response was the same. Humans, everywhere, were ready to fight. They had been ready for years, waiting for someone to give them permission to stop pretending to be weak. Captain Barnes stood beside him, reading the latest intelligence reports. "The aliens still don't know what's happening. They think the New Haven attack scared us into submission." Morrison smiled grimly. "Let them think that. Fear makes people careless." On the Zephyrian homeworld, human servants continued their daily routines. They cleaned offices and government buildings, served food in military headquarters, and maintained equipment in research facilities. Their alien masters noticed nothing unusual. But hidden in cleaning supplies and cooking ingredients were sensors and transmitters. The humans were mapping every important building, recording every conversation, and copying every piece of sensitive data. The Zephyrians had invited their enemies into their most secure locations and never realized the danger. The same pattern repeated across the galaxy. The Valkyrie Syndicate's trade networks were infiltrated by human cargo handlers who knew every shipment and route. The crystalline hegemony's living cities housed human gardeners who understood their biological systems better than the aliens themselves. For 50 years, the galaxy had treated humans as invisible servants. Now that invisibility would become their doom. President Adams finished reading the final report and looked around the table. "How long do we have?" General Price checked his datapad. "All assets are in position. We can begin operations whenever. You give the order. And if we do this, there's no going back," Adams said. "We'll be declaring war on the entire galaxy. They declared war on us when they killed 3 million civilians." Morrison's voice came through the communication link. "We're just choosing to fight back." Adams was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her daughter, who was serving on a colony near Valkyrie space. She thought about all the human children growing up in a galaxy that saw them as inferior. She thought about the parents on New Haven who had died trying to protect their families. "Send the activation codes," she said finally. "It's time the galaxy learned what humans are really capable of." Across human space, sleeper agents received their final orders. Hidden weapon systems came online. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers revealed their true nature as warships. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest trick wasn't pretending to be strong. It was pretending to be weak. The first sign of trouble came quietly, like most dangerous things do. Communications Officer Jenny Walsh sat at her station aboard the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Glory, monitoring routine transmissions between fleet vessels. She had worked here for 2 years, and the aliens trusted her completely. After all, she was just a human communications technician. What they didn't know was that Jenny had graduated first in her class from the Advanced Signals Academy on Mars. She understood their quantum networks better than most Zephyrian engineers. As she worked, Jenny made small adjustments to the communication protocols. A slight delay here, a minor frequency shift there. To the Zephyrians, it looked like normal system maintenance. In reality, she was introducing cascading errors that would spread throughout their entire network. By the time her shift ended, the damage was done. Across the Zephyrian Empire, communication systems that had worked perfectly for centuries began to malfunction. Ships lost contact with their bases. Planetary governors couldn't reach their capitals. Military commanders found themselves cut off from their fleets. The Zephyrians blamed it on solar interference or equipment aging. They never suspected sabotage. After all, what could a primitive human possibly do to their advanced technology? On the Velkari homeworld, maintenance worker Carlos Rivera walked through the underground tunnels beneath the Planetary Defense Center. He had been working here for 18 months, and the Velkari supervisors barely noticed him anymore. Humans were invisible to them, useful only for tasks that were beneath the dignity of a superior species. Carlos carried a standard toolkit and wore the simple gray uniform of a maintenance worker. Hidden in his tools were devices that would have impressed the best Velkari scientists. Carlos had designed them himself, using his knowledge of quantum physics and Velkari biotechnology. The planetary defense grid was the pride of the Velkari. Military, it could destroy entire fleets before they reached orbit. The system was protected by multiple layers of security and fail-safes. But all of those protections were designed to stop external attacks. They weren't designed to stop a humble maintenance worker who understood the system better than its creators. Carlos connected his device to the main control node. The virus he uploaded was elegant in its simplicity. It wouldn't cause obvious damage or trigger alarms. Instead, it would wait, spreading slowly through the network, learning and adapting. When the time came, the entire defense grid would turn against its masters. The first major blow came without warning. The crystalline hegemony's trade convoy was traveling through the neutral zone when space itself seemed to tear open. Admiral Steve Collins emerged from hyperspace with a fleet that shouldn't have existed. The human ships looked nothing like the outdated vessels the aliens were used to seeing. These were sleek predators bristling with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Their hulls were made from materials that absorbed sensor scans, making them nearly invisible until they chose to be seen. The crystalline admiral commanding the convoy stared at his displays in shock. Impossible. Human technology is centuries behind ours, his tactical officer agreed. These readings must be wrong. Humans don't have ships like this. But the weapons fire that tore through their escort vessels was very real. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. Their coordination was perfect, their strikes precise and deadly. Within minutes, the entire convoy was destroyed or captured. The survivors were left floating in escape pods, wondering how the galaxy's weakest species had just humiliated one of its greatest powers. Dr. Anne Murphy sat in a hidden facility on the asteroid, Ceres, preparing her broadcast to the galaxy. As head of Human Psychological Warfare Division, she understood that the greatest battles were won in the mind, not in space. Her message was simple and direct. No threats, no demands, no complex explanations. Just a statement of fact that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. You wanted us to know our place, she said, looking directly into the camera. Now you'll learn yours. The broadcast reached every inhabited system in the galaxy. For the first time in 50 years, humans were speaking to the galaxy as equals, not as servants begging for scraps. The alien governments still didn't understand what was happening. They saw isolated incidents and random attacks. Their arrogance blinded them to the coordinated nature of the human response. They assumed they were dealing with terrorist cells or rogue elements, not a species-wide declaration of war. That assumption died when the Zephyrian Empire's core worlds went dark. The attack came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Orbital platforms simply vanished in flashes of energy that left no debris. Defense satellites turned on each other, their weapon systems corrupted by viruses that had been dormant for months. Communication relays broadcast static instead of data. But the most shocking thing was how quickly it happened. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this region of space for over 1,000 years. Their technology was proven, their defenses unbreakable, their military undefeated. Yet in less than an hour, their core systems were crippled by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the tactical display as human fleets struck across the galaxy. Each attack was perfectly timed, hitting multiple targets simultaneously to prevent coordinated responses. Zephyrian Command is trying to recall their outer fleets, Barnes reported, but most of their long-range communication is down. What about the Velkari? Their defense grid just turned on their own ships. 3 battle groups destroyed before. They knew what hit them. Morrison nodded. It was working exactly as planned. For 50 years, humans had studied alien psychology and tactics. They knew how their enemies thought, how they would react, what their weaknesses were. The aliens had never bothered to study humans in return. Why would they? What could a species of servants possibly teach their masters? Now they were learning. The price of that arrogance. On the crystalline homeworld, panic spread through the living cities as their biological networks began to fail. Human gardeners who had tended their urban forests for decades revealed their true nature as bio-warfare specialists. The viruses they released didn't kill, but they corrupted the complex biological systems that powered crystalline civilization. The crystalline hegemony had believed their living technology made them superior to mechanical civilizations, but humans understood life better than any species in the galaxy. They had turned that understanding into a weapon. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Humans emerged from shadows where they had hidden for generations. Ships that had seemed like cargo haulers revealed themselves as weapons of war. Workers and servants became saboteurs and soldiers. The Galactic Council tried to call an emergency session, but half their members couldn't reach the meeting point. Their communication networks were compromised, their fleets scattered or destroyed, their technology turned against them. For the first time in galactic history, the major powers found themselves completely helpless. They had built their civilization on the assumption that they were superior to humans. Now that assumption was crumbling, and they had no idea how to respond. Morrison looked out at the stars and felt a grim satisfaction. The galaxy had taught humans to be invisible, to be overlooked, to be underestimated. Now they would learn why that had been a mistake. Captain Amy Foster watched through the viewscreen as the Velkari Syndicate's military headquarters burned in the vacuum of space. The battle had lasted exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds. The Velkari fleet, once considered the most advanced in the galaxy, now drifted as wreckage among the asteroids. "How many ships did we lose?" Foster asked her tactical officer. "None, Captain. Their AI systems turned against them the moment we entered the system." Foster nodded grimly. The Velkari had been so proud of their artificial intelligence networks. They claimed their ships could think faster than any organic crew. What they hadn't realized was that humans had been quietly studying those AI systems for decades. When the time came, turning them against their masters had been almost easy. Commander Nick Taylor led his squadron through the wreckage of what had been the Zephyrian Third Fleet. His ships moved like dancers, weaving between debris and disabled vessels with an unpredictability that no alien strategist could counter. "Sir, the surviving Zephyrian ships are requesting terms for surrender," his communications officer reported. "Tell them to broadcast their surrender on all frequencies," Taylor replied. "I want every ship in the sector to hear it." This was the human way of war. While alien civilizations followed rigid doctrines that had been refined over millennia, humans fought with a creativity that came from generations of being forced to adapt or die. They used their enemies' own strengths against them, turning advanced technology into a weakness. The Zephyrians had built their fleet to fight other conventional forces. They had never imagined facing an enemy that could take control of their ship's systems or predict their every move based on decades of careful observation. On Earth, President Adams received a priority communication from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Zektar of the Altarian Republic appeared on her screen, his three eyes wide with what humans might have recognized as fear. President Adams, the Council requests an immediate ceasefire. We are prepared to discuss new territorial arrangements for your species. Adams sat in her office in the ruins of Geneva, surrounded by memorials to the victims of New Haven Colony. Behind her, holographic displays showed the devastating effectiveness of human operations across the galaxy. Alien fleets destroyed, their homeworlds crippled, their technology turned against them. Ambassador, you had your chance for peace. For 50 years, we offered you our friendship and cooperation. You chose to treat us as servants and slaves. When we succeeded despite your oppression, you chose genocide. The New Haven incident was regrettable, but we must think of the future now. Surely we can reach some accommodation. Adams leaned forward, her voice deadly calm. 3 million of my people are dead because you couldn't stand to see humans prosper. There will be no accommodation. There will be no negotiations. There will be consequences. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar staring at a blank screen. For the first time in his long life, the Altarian ambassador understood what it meant to be truly afraid. Engineer Paul Grant stood in the control center of a secret facility hidden in the asteroid belt. Around him, technicians monitored displays that showed every major alien world in the galaxy. For months, human agents had been seeding these worlds with microscopic devices, so small they were invisible to alien sensors. Phase 3 is ready for activation, Grant announced. All targets are locked. President Adams' authorization came through a few minutes later. Grant entered the activation codes, and across the galaxy, the technological foundations of alien civilization began to crumble. On the crystalline hegemony's capital world, the living cities that had grown for centuries suddenly began to wither. The nanobots hidden in their biological systems corrupted the delicate balance that sustained life. Citizens watched in horror as their homes, their transportation, their entire way of life simply stopped working. The Velkari faced a different kind of terror. Their mechanical civilization depended on quantum computers that could process information faster than organic minds could imagine. But the nanobots designed by human scientists introduced subtle errors into quantum calculations. Ships lost navigation. Weapons missed their targets. Even simple machines began to fail. Dr. Kate Morgan activated the final phase of the human plan from her hidden laboratory on Europa. She had spent 20 years studying crystalline technology, learning how their biomechanical systems worked. The aliens had dismissed her as a simple researcher, never realizing that she understood their technology better than they did. The device she activated sent a signal across space, reaching every world where crystalline technology existed. The signal was based on the crystalline's own biocommunications networks, but modified in ways they had never imagined possible. Crystalline citizens across the galaxy suddenly found themselves cut off from their collective consciousness. Their living cities stopped responding to mental commands. Their bioships drifted helplessly in space. In the span of minutes, one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations was reduced to confused individuals with no way to coordinate or communicate. The Zephyrian Empire tried one last desperate assault. Their surviving fleets converged on Earth, hoping to destroy the source of human resistance. Admiral Morrison met them at the edge of the solar system with the largest human fleet ever assembled. The battle was over before it began. The Zephyrian ships found their weapons refusing to fire, their engines failing, their life support systems shutting down. Some ships simply stopped moving, hanging dead in space. Others began firing on their own allies as their computer systems were corrupted by human viruses. Morrison watched the destruction with no satisfaction, only grim determination. "Broadcast this to every system in the galaxy," he ordered. "Let them see what happens to those who threaten human worlds." The galaxy's major powers had built their civilizations on the belief that they were superior to humans. Their technology was more advanced, their cultures more refined, their military forces more powerful. They had created a rigid hierarchy, with themselves at the top and humans at the bottom, but they had made a fundamental error. They had confused technological advancement with intelligence, military power with wisdom, cultural complexity with superiority. They had never bothered to understand what humans were truly capable of when pushed to their limits. Now they were learning that lesson in the most brutal way possible. The Velkhari Syndicate's core worlds were dark, their populations huddled in powered-down cities as their technology rebelled against them. The crystalline hegemony had fragmented into isolated groups, their collective consciousness shattered. The Zephyrian Empire's fleets were scattered across space, their crews trapped in ships that no longer obeyed their commands. In just 72 hours, the galactic order that had existed for millennia was completely destroyed. The species that had ruled the stars for generations found themselves helpless, cut off from their technology, their fleets, and each other. Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so hostile to humanity. Now those same stars were silent, waiting to see what the galaxy's new masters would do with their victory. The age of human submission was over. The age of human dominance had begun. Admiral Jack Sullivan stood on the observation deck of the UES Ascendant as it entered orbit around Zephyr Prime, the former capital of the Zephyrian Empire. Below him, the once mighty world was dark, except for scattered fires burning in the ruins of great cities. The Zephyrian orbital platforms that had once bristled with weapons now drifted as lifeless metal. Their defense fleets were gone, destroyed, or scattered to the far reaches of space. The planet that had ruled an empire spanning hundreds of star systems was now just another conquered world. Sir, we're receiving surrender broadcasts from 17 different Zephyrian factions, his communications officer reported. They're all claiming to represent the legitimate government. Sullivan shook his head. Tell them there is no legitimate government anymore. There's only us. The irony wasn't lost on him. For 50 years, the Zephyrians had treated humans as barely intelligent animals useful only for manual labor and cheap entertainment. Now their empire was gone, their people scattered, their technology useless. The primitives they had despised now controlled their fate. On Earth, President Adams stood before the United Nations General Assembly. But this wasn't the same organization that had existed before the war. Representatives from every human colony and settlement filled the seats once occupied by alien ambassadors. For the first time in galactic history, humanity spoke with one voice. The old order is dead, Adams announced. For centuries, alien civilizations divided us, conquered us, and used us for their own purposes. They told us we were inferior, that we should be grateful for their protection and guidance. The assembly was silent, listening to words that would reshape the galaxy. They were wrong. We were never inferior. We were never their servants. We were their equals, and we proved it when they pushed us too far. Behind Adams, massive screens showed the current state of galactic civilization. The Velkhari Syndicate had collapsed into dozens of warring factions. The crystalline hegemony existed only as isolated communities with no way to communicate with each other. The Zephyrian Empire was a memory, its territories now under human administration. But we will not make their mistakes, Adams continued. We will not rule through fear or oppression. We will build something better. Dr. Cross, now director of Xenological Integration, stood in his new office on New Geneva Station. The space station had been built in the exact location where New Haven Colony once orbited its star, a permanent reminder of what had started this war. Through his windows, Cross could see ships from a dozen different species waiting in formation. These were the survivors, the refugees, the scattered remnants of civilizations that had once ruled the galaxy. Now they came to humanity seeking permission to exist. A Velkhari delegation waited in his outer office. These creatures had once considered humans to be barely above animals. Now they sat nervously in chairs designed for human comfort, hoping for asylum in human space. Send them in, Cross told his assistant. The Velkhari ambassador entered slowly, his mechanical limbs clicking against the floor. His 3 optical sensors focused on Cross with obvious discomfort. Director Cross, my people request sanctuary in the Kepler sector. We are willing to accept provisional citizenship under human authority. Cross studied the alien for a long moment. Just months ago, this creature's people had enslaved human workers and laughed at human requests for basic rights. Now he was begging for mercy from the species he had once despised. You understand the conditions? Cross asked. You will have the same status humans once held in your territory. You will work where we assign you. You will live where we permit. You will be grateful for what you receive. The Velkari ambassador's sensors dimmed with what might have been shame. We understand. We accept these conditions. Good. Report to Integration Center 7 for processing. You'll be assigned quarters and work details according to your abilities. As the alien left, Cross felt no satisfaction from the reversal of fortune. He took no joy in seeing former masters become servants. But he understood the necessity of establishing the new order clearly and firmly. Commander Morrison, now Admiral of the Human Space Force, walked through the corridors of the memorial complex on New Geneva Station. The walls were covered with names. Every human who had died on New Haven Colony. Every victim of alien oppression across the centuries. He stopped in front of a particular section of the wall. Maria Santos, age 28, engineer. Her baby daughter had been with her when the Zephyrian beams fell. Both names were carved into the black stone, along with 3 million others. Admiral? Captain Barnes approached quietly. She now commanded her own ship, one of hundreds in the new human defense fleet. Any word from the outer territories? Morrison asked. The last Zephyrian holdouts surrendered an hour ago. Admiral Collins reports complete success in the crystalline sectors. The galaxy is secure. Morrison nodded but didn't look away from the wall. And what's the cost? Barnes checked her data pad. Final casualty reports show minimal human losses. Most of our operations succeeded without significant resistance. I meant the cost to them. Barnes was quiet for a moment. She understood what he meant. The human victory had been complete and devastating. Entire civilizations had been crippled or destroyed. Billions of sentient beings now lived under human authority, dependent on human mercy for their survival. They made their choice when they killed New Haven, Barnes said finally. We just showed them the consequences. Morrison finally turned away from the memorial wall. Make sure our people remember that. We didn't start this war. We just finished it. The galaxy had indeed fallen silent, but it wasn't the silence of death. It was the silence of a universe that had learned to fear what happened when humanity decided it had endured enough. On worlds across known space, human administrators worked to establish new governments. Former alien rulers found themselves applying for basic citizenship rights. Species that had once commanded vast fleets now begged for permission to maintain small patrol craft. The reversal was complete and permanent. Humanity had not just won a war, they had rewritten the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. President Adams concluded her address to the assembled representatives. We stand at the beginning of a new age, an age where worth is measured by character, not species, where justice applies equally to all sentient beings, where no one will ever again suffer the fate of New Haven Colony. The applause that followed echoed through the assembly chamber and across human space. But in the silence between the cheers, another sound could be heard. The whispered prayers of alien populations hoping their new human masters would prove more merciful than they themselves had been. Admiral Morrison stood one last time before the memorial wall, reading the simple inscription carved below the names. They silenced 3 million voices. We made sure the galaxy heard everyone. The age of human subjugation was over. The age of human dominance had begun. And across the galaxy, in the darkness between the stars, the silence spoke louder than any words ever could. The galaxy had learned too late that the most dangerous predator was the one that didn't look like a threat, until it was already too late to matter. Humanity had been underestimated for the last time,